to the pharma and all these corporate Democrats and Republicans running rampant over our rights, per usual, and emptying our pockets. But Bernie Sanders, good old Bernie, another progressive warrior, a little bit more so than the former, Elizabeth Warren, she's got her issues. Bernie Sanders just came out, though, with an op-ed in the Washington Post, which I found quite ironic because the Washington Post, remember the time when they published 16 negative headlines about Bernie Sanders in 16 hours? Remember that time? Bernie Sanders doesn't seem to hold any grudges, and the Washington Post seems to really care what he has to say now that he's a Democratic leader and he's in the leadership and they want to publish his op-ed. So, Bernie Sanders, take it. Get your op-ed published in the Washington Post, but I find it quite interesting that the Washington Post now is very interested in what he has to say and wants their readers wants the readers to hear what Bernie Sanders has to say once he opposes Trump. So, obviously, this is a live broadcast, so I can't have the text up there. I hope you guys can bear with me as I read you this awesome op-ed from Bernie Sanders. So, as you may recall, yesterday I talked about how I praised Donald Trump a little bit tepidly, where I said that Donald Trump just struck a deal with Carrier, which was a company in Indiana, and he was able to keep 1,000 jobs in the United States. I did also mention that that was going to come at a massive tax burden, and Bernie Sanders than I would have in that situation. So, this is the title of the op-ed in the Washington Post. Bernie Sanders, Carrier Donald Trump. So, as we all know, Donald Trump may be intelligent in how he can manipulate people, how he can judge a crowd, how he can judge what people want, but Donald Trump isn't very smart in deal making because he's gone bankrupt multiple times. He was able to get the end that he wanted, but does the end justify the means? Here we go. Bernie Sanders. Today, about 1,000 Carrier workers and their families should be rejoicing, but the rest of our nation's workers should be very nervous. President-elect Donald Trump will reportedly announce a deal with United Technologies, the corporation that owns Carrier, that keeps less than 1,000 of the 2,100 jobs in America that were previously scheduled to be transferred to Mexico. Let me be clear. It is not, was that Obama or Bernie Sanders? I am not good at impressions. It is not good enough to save some of the jobs. Trump made a promise that he would save all of the jobs, and we cannot rest until an ironclad contract is signed to ensure that all of these workers are able to continue working in Indiana without having their pay or benefits slashed. In exchange for allowing United Technologies to continue to offshore more than 1,000 jobs, Trump will reportedly give the company tax and regulatory favors that the corporation has sought, as we predicted. Just a short few months ago, Trump was pledging to force United Technologies to pay a damn tax. He was insisting on very steep tariffs for companies like Carrier that left the United States and wanted to sell their foreign-made products back in the United States. Instead of a damn tax, Bernie is being very sarcastic here, the company will be rewarded with a damn tax cut. Wow! United States to move abroad. In essence, United Technologies took Trump hostage and won, and that should send a shockwave of fear through all workers across the country. So Bernie's not mincing words here. He's basically saying, yeah, United Technologies took you for a sucker, Donald Trump. They saved 1,000 jobs in Indiana. That's the short-term fix, but you are slashing their budgets. It's going to hurt workers long-term. But you know what Bernie doesn't get sometimes? Is that not everyone is as kind-hearted as him. Donald Trump doesn't care at all if workers don't have the wages that they want. He just wants people to think that he's fulfilling his promises. He wants his poll numbers to be up. He wants to turn on cable news and to have people say, oh, he did a good job. Bernie doesn't get that Trump doesn't really have any empathy. Not everyone's a public servant like you, my friend. Bernie continues. Trump has endangered the jobs of workers who were previously safe in the United States. Why? Because he has signaled to every corporation in America that they can threaten to offshore jobs in exchange for business-friendly tax benefits and incentives. They'll be reevaluating their stance this morning. And who would pay for the high cost for tax cuts that go to the... That's Obama again! God, my impression. Why do I even try? Okay. United Technologies is not going broke. Last year, it made a profit of $7.6 billion and received more than $6 billion in defense contracts. It also received more than $50 million from the Export-Import Bank and very generous tax breaks. By the way, under Obama. Hope and change. In 2014, United Technologies gave its former chief executive, Louis Chenevert, a golden parachute worth more than $172 million. Last year, the company's 5 highest paid executives made more than $50 million. The firm also spent $12 billion to inflate its stock price instead of using that money to invest in new plants and workers. So, you guys can read the full editorial in the Washington Post. But basically, Donald Trump is called a sucker by Bernie Sanders over and over again. And he's right. In the technical sense. Donald Trump is not really, I think, one, smart enough or empathic enough to care about the long-term strategies of this kind of deal-making. Donald Trump just thinks 2 steps ahead of him, and as Cenk has always said, he's a crowd surfer. He just knows he goes where the crowd goes, and that's all that matters to him at this point. Does this look... But that's why we need progressives like Bernie Sanders to fight on this, as Democrats are just going to give him all the good press about this, and say, yeah, he's bringing back jobs. Oh wait, then they look back 2 years later and everything's a disaster zone, and Donald Trump got that short-term credit because the Democrats didn't fight back. Bernie's fighting back. But will the rest of them fight back? Here's the angle on this that I wanted to push. So, that's how you that's how you would be successful in fighting Donald Trump, is to, while he does these short-term clipped strategies to get people to like him, you have to call out the long-term consequences of those strategies. Will they do that? From the Hill. While outgoing Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid of Nevada didn't want Democrats to work with vulnerable Republicans ahead of the 2016 elections, his heir apparent Charles Schumer, is signaling a willingness to let his members do what they need in order to survive in the next Congress. Schumer named another vulnerable Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, to his leadership team. Manchin voted against Reid serving another term as leader after the 2014 midterm election, and recently slammed him as divisive for criticizing Trump in the wake of his victory. By the way, Manchin's an incredibly conservative Democrat. Him and Chuck Schumer, just 2 peas in a pod. A spokesperson for Manchin and his top priorities next year included working with Trump and Republicans to pass the Miners Protection Act, roll back harmful regulations on coal, and renegotiate trade policies and rebuild the nation's infrastructure. Trump won West Virginia with nearly 69% of the vote. Tester and 2 other Democrats up for re-election in 2018 in states won by Trump, Bob Casey and Sherrod Brown of Ohio, are co-sponsors on the Clean Coal Bill, which is a made-up thing. There's no such thing as clean coal. That bill had little chance of moving if Reid was in charge. By the way, I will say this to the end of time. Reid is not even the worst of the corporate Democrats at all. And, we were, he's better than Chuck Schumer. He's miles better than Chuck Schumer. I would have taken 10 more years of Harry Reid over 4 years of corporatist Wall Street, big, lackey Chuck Schumer. Anyway, I'll continue. Democrats in tough races. The bill had little chance of moving while Reid was in charge. He once declared with typical bluntness, "It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as clean coal technology." Democrats in tough races have been quick to call for putting the bad blood of the election behind them and focus on different results for constituents. Here we go. Working across the aisle with her Republican colleagues to forge compromise and advance bipartisan ideas is exactly what Claire McCaskill has done since she joined the Senate, regardless of what party holds the White House or who's in charge of Congress. And it's exactly what she'll keep doing, says John LeBombard, a spokesman for Claire McCaskill, who is expected to run for re-election in the state that Trump won with 57% of the vote. Tax reform is one area where Republicans could see cooperation from Democrats. And there you have it. So while you have progressives like Bernie Sanders who are going to fight him tooth and nail on things that they know would long term be bad for the American people, these Claire McCaskill, even Sherrod Brown, who's supposed to be a progressive, Joe Manchin, Chuck Schumer, let's work together on tax cuts. Instead of fighting him tooth and nail, instead of showing why his proposals would be harmful for the American people, they're going to work with him on coal. And are the Democrats stupid and weak enough to be scammed over and over and over again? I only have decades of history to answer that question. Here we go, guys. Buckle up. And make sure that you watch what Bernie Sanders is saying and not what Joe Manchin, even Sherrod Brown, who's supposed to be progressive. Come on, guys. Let's listen to the true progressives in the room, because looks like the weak motherfucking Democrats aren't going to do a damn thing, and they're going to make Trump look good because they don't know how to fight. All right, guys, have a good day.